Hi to everyone who's just joined us. Welcome to the webinar on ecologists using the Land app and how we are building the platform to help facilitate nature recovery. I'm Dan, and I'll be taking us through this hour-long training webinar. Just before we get started, as usual, just a quick bit of housekeeping. As it is a webinar, your camera and microphone and video will remain off throughout, but we don't want you to not get involved in any conversation. So any questions you might have, please do use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen, or if you want to chat to any of the other participants, please do use that chat function. At the end of the webinar, I will be hanging around for 5 or 10 minutes. So if there's any immediate questions, whether it's about your particular use case or just generally, do feel free to stay and have a conversation. And the session is being recorded, so all of it will be uploaded to YouTube probably early next week, but we'll see what we can do. And then finally, there are some feedback questions as usual that happen on the end. These ones are specific around the ecology and nature recovery, so please do answer them. They will be useful, including about future training and any future product updates we might be releasing. The agenda for today should be on your screen now, where we're just going to tick off the housekeeping. I'm then going to just dive straight into the training session. And the way I'm separating it today is firstly just around individual sites, just a reminder for existing or just a demonstration for the new users we've got on for how you can use the Land app to design an individual site's plan. So that's building your baseline. I'm going to introduce or just demonstrate again how you can buy OS Master Map if of interest. And I'm also going to show you how you can use the free translation between basic payment and UK habitat classification. And then also dive into how you can use the land management plan template to start drafting up future scenarios for your site, whether it's your own farm or for a client. Once that's complete, I'm then going to kind of go into a bit of a demonstration of an existing use case, which is using those two main data layers, the baseline and land management plan, to start aggregating future scenarios at scale. So I'm going to show you how Map of Maps, one of our functions, is used up in Cheshire, and also how that's interacting with a live interactive dashboard. The final note is that we'll be giving a bit of a demonstration of a new product that we're hoping to release soon in partnership with UK Hab and others, which is the best guess baseline. It's not officially out yet. There's still a couple of teething things, but in that survey, we do ask whether it would be useful and whether you're interested in learning more. So please do answer that. So just as a note, where we see ourselves as a company moving is supporting professionals or people wanting to get ready for the biodiversity metric. We're not going to be able to do the biodiversity metric ourselves. We need people on the ground truthing data and you interacting with the metric 3.1, sorry. But what we do really want to do is speed up that process as much as possible. So today's demonstration will hopefully show you some of the key functions that can help you get prepared for that biodiversity offsetting around building the data sets, exporting the data sets, and using the spatial tools we have to make those data more and more accurate. It is worth saying that just earlier today I saw a demonstration of our new mobile app as well. So that mobile app will hopefully be being launched in early August, which will start to support more in-field ground truthing of existing habitat and ecological data. Before I dive into the Land app demo, just while I've got the slides up, I just want to flag up there's some new guidance that's been released around importing existing data, and it might be relevant to any of you that are coming onto the Land app that's already got a site map generated. And the reason I want to show you this is because we've had a couple of support cases come in which are showing people wanting to import data. They use the import function, but they've missed one step, which is making sure that the attributes within that data match what Land app's expecting to see. So I will share the hyperlink at the end, or if you just search for the technical guide for importing data on our help and guidance pages, there is a section on how to import data. And the main feature that you need within your data, especially with relation to UK Hab and UK habitat data, is that there needs to be a column called LA feature type, and that LA feature type needs to include the UK habitat code. So if you are uploading UK Hab codes, or in another scenario, countryside stewardship codes or basic payment, there needs to be a feature called LA feature type. that just holds that code, and therefore Land App will pre-populate and pre-style your map for you. So just a note that that's now been released, and hopefully it'll be useful to some of you. So just to dive in really with the demo, I'm going to start on the home page. I'm going to just build up from scratch, just in case there's anyone new to the webinar series. Is worth saying that our marketing team have been spending a lot of time building up our community page. So if you're interested in more case studies, how the different functions are using, do have a bit of a look at the different blogs that are being released. There's some really good stuff in there, including some of the work we're doing with the Lincoln Wildlife Trust, and a bit more about our tool. So I'd highly recommend going have a look at community and seeing if there's anything there of interest. So as usual, I'm going to start by logging in. For those that haven't got a free account, do come and register for free. You should be able to follow the signing up process fairly quickly. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create another demo map that will walk through first that setting up the individual site. So the individual site could be, a reserve you're working on, or an individual farm, or a tenant within an estate. So demo site 1 webinar. Okay. So I'm just creating a new map, and the way that I've done that is I've just hit the new button at the top right hand side, and then given it a name, given it a tag. These tags are only available to those who are in the subscription model, but that just helps you organize amongst your team what maps people see and interact with. Once you create an empty map, you're then dropped onto an interactive based map. And from here, there's a couple of things you can do to start defining your site boundary. The first and easiest way is if your client is farmland in England, you can use a single business identifier number, which is a 9-digit number given by the Rural Payment Agency, and use it within this import from Rural Payment Agency button, type it in, and download the relevant data sets. Now for the ecological survey work, if you are using the BPS data, I'd recommend just getting land covers and hedges. Land covers is pretty much the same as land parcels, apart from it just breaks down those parcels into subsequent habitat types as well. When you hit import, that just directly drops that client or that farm's map onto the interactive base map. And just for today, I'm going to spend most of it on being imagery. From here, there are other ways that you can. So without the SBI number, you don't actually need an SBI number to create a site plan. So just to show you, if I didn't have the SBI number for this client and therefore located this site other ways, maybe through using our search and map function with a postcode. I don't actually know the postcode here, could work it out. Or as a note, we've now got what 3 words as well in the software. So if you've got a what 3 words address, a coordinate, a postcode, you can search the map using this search the map function at the top of your screen, and that'll bring you here. And then the next is you can pick from Land Registry. So you can use this pick from Land Registry button, which will load all of the vector files, so all of the polygon shapes that make up all the individual land sections. And you can just click on the field parcels that are relevant to your site. So I think off the top of my head, these are all the ones that are relevant within this map. And that is now giving me an orange outline, probably quite similar, similar to what was on my SBI number. The main difference is we haven't got that field parcel breakdown. So that's how you can define your boundary. And as I mentioned in the slides, you can also import boundaries. So it doesn't have to just be a habitat map. You can import a file. It just has to be one of these 3 file types at the moment: GeoJSON, KML, or shape files. But again, lots of guidance to support you in that importing if needed. So when you're building a plan, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a free workflow that anyone who's got either an SBI number can use, or how you can start using the registry parcels. And then I'm just going to redo that again, but I'm going to show you the buying master map version. Master map, especially for you professional ecologists, is going to be the authoritative data set that you can build your maps off. So I'm just going to show you how you can interact with that. Plus, I'll show you the best guess baseline outcome as well that we're hopefully going to start promoting relatively soon. So if I'm going to be following the basic payment workflow, which means using the single business identifier land covers to start getting to that UK HAB premise, the first thing I need to do is create a project. I choose basic payment, and I create my basic payment scheme from land covers. And what that does is that then translates for you all those land cover codes that are contained within your field parcels into colors on the map, which represent those habitat types or those basic payment scheme codes. So you can see that my grasslands have gone light green, permanent grassland, and my woodlands have gone dark green with woodland. And then a couple of other features, for example, my ponds have gone gray. And my sports and recreation field here, it's gone dark gray. Within this process, so this free translation, there are going to be elements that have missed or you want to adapt or enhance. For example, this little field plot, I don't actually know what it is, but let's just say for argument's sake, it's landline fallow. It could be a husky corner or a game margin, but I'm just going to call it fallow for now. And the same for over here. I'm just going to say that actually that's a mistake from the RLR download. And I'm just going to merge those and just make that a continuous grass feature. And the way that I did that is I held shift on my keyboard, selected the other polygon, and now I'm going to choose merge. And now they've combined those into two. Looking at aerial imagery, there is actually something different happening there. But for the demonstration, let's just pretend I wanted to merge those together. From this basic payment scheme, even if basic payment scheme isn't what you're doing, the reason we're promoting this is there's just a couple of things that it supports that will help you in the longer term build up a more accurate habitat map. And that includes, for example, adding crop codes if you are working on an arable land, or adding some of those more detailed basic payment codes as well. So let's just say for the hypothetical situation, there are some crops in this block here. You can then use the basic payment codes for the crop types. So all this stage is doing is just using basic payment to fill in the gaps. And this strip, for example, is rivers and streams. So that should have carried through, but just double checking basically anywhere that there's a gap, why there's a gap. So scrub sometimes doesn't carry through as well. So you can see I'm just filling in at the moment on the basic payment template, everything that is currently red. So again, let's just give this a fallow code. There are other things you can do in the basic payment, but because we're mainly ecologists here, we don't really want to worry too much more about this. But it will become apparent in a moment why I've gone down the basic payment route rather than straight to the basic baseline habitat assessment, is because thanks to partners such as Flag Southwest and a couple of others, we've now got a free translation built within the software from basic payment to UK HAB. And the way that you activate that is that you click the three dots next to your basic payment scheme, hit the duplicate button, and then choose your baseline habitat assessment. And this is my BPS to UK HAB project. And what will happen is it will now translate those basic payment scheme codes directly into the UK habitat codes. So you can see now what I've got is I've got where my fallow land was is just given the arable land C1 code on the UK HAB classification. All of my permanent grasslands have been given the primary habitat code G for grassland. And where possible, there's some translations that have gone further up that hierarchy. So standing open water, so that pond or that lake is now a standing open water code R1. And I probably should have said at the start, during this webinar, I'm going to assume there's a bit of knowledge on UK HAB as the classification. We are going to be, as part of the survey at the end, asking if anyone would be interested in some official training from UK HAB and LandApp as a partnership training that upskills you on UK HAB, but also the application for example, biodiversity metric. But for this demo, I'm just showing you how to use the LandApp rather than what the classification is. Other things that have been translated, we've got this sealed surface primary habitat, which is U1B, has come from the translation of hard standings. So during that translation, you get a pretty quick, and this is why I'm promoting that if you've got an SBI number, use it, because it's pretty good to just get you a basic habitat map. And you can see now that I've got 100% coverage, apart from this bit of land that I must have forgot to put in, which I can, it's just a bit of code. Now, you can use this to build up your picture, build up your plan, and understand where those habitats are and develop a bit more of a detailed understanding. So from here, you can start using some more of those drawing tools. So for example, if I just turned off my habitat map at the moment and zoomed into this field, I can see on the satellite that there's some form of margin. The grass is slightly longer around the outside, and there's also a little track that's coming through there. So you can now start to use the LandApp's drawing tools to improve the accuracy or the resolution of each of these fields. So for example, if I was going to add a buffer to this side of the track, selected the field parcel, hit draw and chose the line feature. And then what that will do is that will naturally magnetize. You can see it's trying to magnetize to the edge of the field parcel. So I've got a blue line going down the edge, outlining where I want the buffer to go, drawn the line, and now I use the buffer tool to click buffer and choose side 1 or side 2. And I mean, in terms of which one goes which way, at the moment, just use trial and error. Side 1 is technically the left-hand side and side 2 is the right-hand side. So in this case, I need the right-hand side from the direction I've drawn. And you can see that it's added that buffer for me, which I can then dictate the width. Let's go 3 meters. For now, there's a couple of other things on this edit settings form that you can change. The rounded corners just will make the buffer strip slightly more natural. So if I hit the rounded corners, you can see, I mean, it was very, very faint, but it did turn it from an angle to a slightly more rounded edge. And then the subtract function will just remove the area of grassland underneath the buffer. So at the moment, you can see there's grassland underneath, it's green. If I hit subtract and click OK, it's now hole punch, so to speak, that buffer through the grassland. And why that's important is then you're getting 100% coverage. So really good practice when you're mapping on Land App is just try and think, is my map 2-dimensional? If not, how do I make it 2-dimensional? As soon as you've got features overlapping one another, you're going to be double counting, especially when you're coming to biodiversity metric, and I'll come on to that a bit later. So I've now drawn my margin. I can now give it a code. So grass field margin more than likely is going to be a neutral grassland margin. It might be tusky grasses. However, you can use the UK have field key to work that out. So let's just say I've given it a G3, but the defining feature is a secondary code, which you can then access in this right-hand panel as well. So by hitting select next to secondary code, I've got a completely different list of features that I can assign to each habitat. And the one that I want for tusky grasses is a tall or tussocky sward secondary code, which is number 161. So we've built in all of the secondary codes within Land App for you to then use those and apply those to the feature. So you can see now that my one feature has not only got a primary habitat, which is G3, it's also got a secondary code of 161. So you're building up that not only the habitat type, but also the context of the habitat type. And there is a whole swathe of secondary codes in there that you can use. Off the top of my head, I think there's a tool herb as well. So yeah, just you might have to check the UK have definitions of which of these two you might use. But yeah, there's lots in there that would be useful for defining the difference between two differently managed pieces of grass within the same parcel. So maybe this grass is ungrazed or uncut, whereas this section might be, for example, either sheep grazed or has a hay cut on it as well. And so when you're thinking ecologically, it's not just that primary habitat that defines the habitat itself, it's how it's managed, how is it interacted with, that might make the difference between two different grassland types. So my main field has got a primary habitat of G, and I forgot to add the secondary code. Let's just say hey, like this, and so like this, but it might be that both of these are neutral grassland. So you can see that even though I've got a buffer, the primary habitat's the same, but the thing that differentiates the tussocky grass buffer side and the actual main field is the secondary code. The third thing you can add as well from here, but bearing in mind this is still me building the plan before I've gone on the survey, you can add, just to show you while I was going through it, you can add conditional scores. So if you've retrospectively gone on the survey, you can add a condition assessment to it using the drop down on the right-hand panel. Again, we're prepping for the site visit at the moment in my head. So using now, obviously we've got our template, we can just go around the fields, we can use data layers to try and inform a bit better about what habitat types might be there. An example of that could be, for example, if I turned on the ancient woodland layers and had a look where ancient woodland is, I can see that I've got this block that is ancient woodland, and that ancient woodland site is a semi-natural ancient woodland. It doesn't say what the species makeup is, but you could make an assumption that it's broadleaf mixed, and looking at the image it does look like broadleaf mixed. It's not a conifer plantation. And so from here it's worth reminding you can actually copy the shape of that block onto your habitat map. So you can see at the moment, my habitat map doesn't correlate exactly with the ancient woodland data layer. So what you can do is you can actually right click on the ancient woodland. So I've just toggled off my UK hab layer, right clicked on the ancient woodland and hit copy to project. I'm going to bring that over to my UK hab layer, my VPS to UK hab. And now what I've got is I've got the authoritative shape from the Forestry Commission's ancient woodland reference layer. Was it Natural England? Can't remember. I've got that shape. But there's two things you need to do right now. Is firstly, remember the two-dimensional piece I just mentioned, is that actually I've got double counting of woodland because I've got this block sat on top of the other block. So the first thing you can do is you can hit the buffer button and subtract. And so now what I've done is I've now hole punched my ancient woodland away. And you might get these, this legacy nodes, depends on how anal about it you want to be. You can tidy those up, or you can just leave them. So I've now hole punched it through, and I can then assign the use. So let's just say hypothetically, that is a broadleaf and mixed woodland. Hole punched it, assigned it. The final thing to be aware of is that when you copy features from a data layer, and this I'll do one more demo in a moment, all of the features come into the land app or come into that data layer is under something called an unknown land parcel. When you're dealing with field parcel data, BPS, for example, or this UK hab layer, all of our habitats are filed away nicely within a field number, a field reference parcel layer. But actually what you want is I want this ancient woodland to also be part of this little folder. And so the way you do it is if you go into your unknown land parcel, select the field parcel that you want to move, like so, click the three dots and hit move to, and then just type in the parent ID number for that land parcel that we want. I hit move, and now both of these, woodland and broadleaf mixed woodland, are filed away under the right field parcel. For your BNG, that's not urgent, but for data hygiene, it could be quite a good thing to do. And it's relevant as well if any of you are doing a stewardship or basic payment as well. Just keeping them filed away keeps it nice and tidy. So that's looking at ancient woodlands. There are other data layers that you might want to use. Triple SI information, for example, sometimes has some good habitat data layers. I don't think this farm's got any triple SIs. And then the other main one is priority habitat. So if I turned on the priority habitat inventory, just have a look, you can see that the priority habitat inventory is telling me that there's some habitats here that can help me improve my quality of my UK hab layer. So for example, these two blocks, both are saying they're broadleaf. Let's bring them over to my basic payment map, go on my BPS, got these two, going to first subtract them. I'm going to assign them both now to W1 because I know they're broadleaf. And then finally, I'm just going to file them away in the field parcel number, which is this one, in my unknown land parcel. So do use the chat if you want me to repeat any of that, but that's just how you can copy features from existing data layers to your own hab map to start building up a bit of a more detailed premise. So you can see I've got my ancient woodland block here, which actually I think there's an ancient woodland code, isn't there? Ancient woodland site, there we are. So you can actually add the secondary code for ancient woodland onto that feature, just so when you're out in the surveying, you've got a bit of an understanding of where the ancient woodland site and the priority habitats are. Okay, so that's was probably a pretty quick run through, but like I said, that was being recorded. So if you want to just have a look at that, and that's really how you can use an SBI number to build up a quick UK hab map for a client. All of that data is available to download in a couple of different ways. Obviously, you can print it using our print function. I'm not going to cover that now. You can use our report function to get a high-level summary of breakdown of those habitats. So you can see that my 130 hectare client has got this breakdown of features, which can be used, for example, for biodiversity unit estimating. You can obviously just extract this data, assume moderate condition even before you go on a site, and just work out future scenarios, and I'll come on to that in a moment, to then estimate metric, biodiversity unit potential. Or you can click this little tabular button here, which shows you the breakdown of each of those habitats by rows of field parcels. So it's not only just saying that you've got 20 hectares of grass, it's saying how much hectarage is within each field parcel. Both of those, by the way, can be exported to Excel using this export to Excel button at the top right. And then, yeah, that, like I said, that can be used for putting in a biodiversity metric calculator. We are building, in our demo at the moment, we are building a biodiversity unit estimator using that same logic. I've just got to get my head down and beaver away at it. It's a bit trickier than we first thought. Okay, so for those of you that haven't got a SBI number, don't worry. What I'm going to do is show you how you can use a combination of Land Registry data and Ordnance Survey master map to start building up a similar picture. Land Registry parcels, obviously we've got the boundary. The first thing you need to do is just create a project, and this is only for the next 2 months. We're actually updating this left-hand panel, so just for the next 2 months. After this, it should be a lot easier, but you just need to move the data into a project by hitting duplicate and choosing ownership boundary. Ownership. So this is basically just defining my site. And once it's here, you can see I've got this red line boundary with multiple polygons on. I'm just going to change the style of that, make it slightly more obvious where it is. From here, what you can do is you can start your baseline survey by purchasing OS master map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the buy data button. I'm going to choose master map topography layer, and I'm then going to use a project, which is ownership. So I'm now using that red line boundary that I just defined. I'm then going to choose intersect setting cut features. And the difference between these are quite relevant, especially for ecological surveys. Whole features will leave any, we call it like furry edges, I think they call it, which is basically if your river flows halfway through or a ditch flows halfway through, they'll give you the whole feature. Whereas we want it to have a hard edge because we've got a defined survey area. So use cut features, hit demo. This will then give you a quote for purchasing that OS master map for 12 months. But the reason I'm going this route rather than trying to draw the polygons will hopefully come apparent quite quickly in a moment, is that the accuracy of the field parcels and the existing shapes is pretty dramatic compared to what you could do if you manually drew those polygons. Obviously, we would let you do that, but it just might take a bit more time than it's worth. From here, what would have happened is we've now purchased the OS master map. It's now sent a request to our database, and it's returned for you 2 different project layers. One's called OSMM area demo, which are the polygons that make up the master map for your site boundary. And the second one is the labels. There's probably not too many labels within this area. Oh, there's one. Let me turn on blank for a moment. But that's just the it's just the labels that make up the features. So you can see that it's labeling the pond. It just allows you to turn those on and off and print with or without labels. But from here, this is actually a really quite detailed, way more detailed than the basic payment level of detail. This is a detailed overview using master map, which instantly could be broken down. So just to show you, you can generate a report straight away on the OS master map area, and you can get a rough idea of coverage of different things. So how much agricultural land is here? 105.6 hectares. What's the breakdown of different woodland types, etc., etc. So that's how you can use master map, purchase it in a quick way. But obviously we want it in the language of UK HAB. Now there's 2 ways that you can do it yourself. The first way is just simply is a bit manual, but you can duplicate your OSMM area, this demo area, directly into a baseline habitat project layer. But at the moment, just to let you know, this is not going to automatically translate it for me. So when I hit create project, what it does is it's kept all the shapes of all the master map. So if I turn this off, you can see the color goes, but it has left me all the different features. So you could now hypothetically, and this is still pretty quick, God, that was a mouthful, a pretty quick process, but you could now hypothetically, the styling from Land app shows you where the mixed woodland is. These are mixed woodland, for example. I can then go around my holding shift and just clicking on all the mixed woodland fields, like so. Like this, and that's obviously then going to be able to be assigned W1 mixed broadleaf woodland. All the arable fields, obviously, or agricultural fields, Ordnance Survey call them. So Ordnance Survey don't actually describe between permanent grassland and arable. So you just need to check satellite imagery or obviously do your survey before you assign those. But yeah, having a look on Bing imagery, you can quickly see whether those agricultural fields are permanent grassland or cropland. So that's how you can use the ownership boundary. You get the master map. Again, the principle then is exactly the same as I've just shown you. You can add margins, etc. But actually, interestingly, Ordnance Survey did pick up something different happening here. They just picked up a different shape, which is, yeah, was what I was trying to draw. So the buffer I just drew is actually being mapped out by Ordnance Survey. You can see that that margin is there. So actually I could use that and graph the same thing I just did before, those three shapes, G3, neutral grassland with the secondary code of like so. So there's two different routes there of you gaining a basic payment, a baseline habitat assessment. One is using an SBI number, which gives you 100% coverage, but the granularity of the data is not great. So basic payment looks like this. And then just to overlay, for example, the additional bit of detail you get from the master map, you can see that, for example, this paddock, this field of paddocks in master map is picking it up, which when you're doing your survey could be quite useful, especially around those secondary codes. So just as a note. What I wanted to show you now is that everything I've just done manually, we are really trying to automate. So we've partnered with UK Hab, and we've worked closely with FWAG and a couple of others to basically try and automate everything I've just shown you and make it a little bit less fiddly. So just before the webinar, what I've done is I've ran the best guess baseline algorithm, and I just want to show you the output just because it's relevant to the survey questions that happen at the end. So that's the manual way of doing it. But if I go back in here and go to best guess baseline demo, we can now automatically produce this file for you on the fly. So rather than you having to duplicate and assign, we can actually create this file for you, which automatically assigns all the UK Hab codes using a combination of OS master map and a couple of other data layers, including the priority habitat inventory. So this single data set, which we call the best guess baseline, just combines the priority habitat inventory with your chosen boundary to give you a best guess. So you can see that the ancient woodland site that we did earlier has been picked up. You can see that that priority habitat woodland has also been picked up. But this area, the Ordnance Survey said was conifer trees and non-conifer trees. The algorithm wasn't confident whether it was just a broadleaf mixed woodland or a conifer woodland, so it's not been over assigned. But what we're hoping is that that process will just speed up that initial setup before you go on a site. So when the question at the end of the survey comes, would this be useful? This is what we're referring to, this best guess baseline. Because it's using master map, the granularity of it is pretty good. All the buildings have got their own code, the ponds, the ditches come out as well, and the rivers and streams. And because it combines with a couple of other data layers, there's a couple of features in this right-hand panel that a couple of labels that might be of interest. So for example, we've got a confidence levels from priority habitat inventory and also the main habitat on the priority habitat inventory. So this is good quality semi-improved grassland, but it's low confidence. So the algorithm says it's just grassland. It needs to be surveyed before we can say whether it's one type or another on the habitat inventory. So yeah, just to put that on your radar, really keen to roll that out soon. We're just finalizing some pieces with UK Hab, and yeah, that should be available to at least access and use and hopefully speed up your workflows dramatically. Right, so we're just over halfway through the webinar, and that kind of explains individual farms building up that site plan. So that initial site plan, you've got a new client, what's the quickest way to value? And those are definitely the main routes. The next one is once you've gone on a survey and you've obviously come back and you can, hopefully you've taken potentially the mobile app because it's out and it's being useful and you've ground truthed your data. But there's also the element of scenario planning, that future vision for the farm. What is the next best steps? And so this is why we've created a project called Land Management Plan. And that land management plan pretty much has the identical codes to what is in the baseline habitat assessment, apart from it's simply meant to be used for not habitats that are there currently, but habitats that we want to be there or that plan to be there. And so the quickest way to draft up a land management plan, well, there's actually two. One, you can either duplicate your baseline and then just duplicate your baseline into land management plan. So this is my land management plan demo. This is obviously based off OS master map, but you can see now I've got an empty map or an unassigned map where I can be choosing certain features for certain habitat interventions. So for example, let's just say hypothetically on my walk, these 3 polygons, they'd be good for woodland planting. You can just doodle up for the client that woodland planting area. The same for, anything in here. The advice might be, split the field and do some, move away from set stocking and start to do some rotational grazing. You can split the feature, give them a code about what you want them to become. Maybe you're trying to improve it towards lowland meadows, and you want it to, you want the action to be either a habitat improvement or a habitat change. So in this case, it's a habitat improvement. We're trying to move the baseline from maybe this grassland that is either coded as a neutral grassland or heavily modified grassland. But the land management plan is that it's actually got potential to go up to a lowland meadows, and it's just a spatial scenario for that. So here's where I want to plant woodland. Here's where I want to do some meadow restoration. And again, just to finish off the hypothetical situation, I also want to plant, some hedgerows through the middle of this field, like so, to speed it up and to obviously encourage that rotational grazing. Hypothetical situation, just trying to hurry through. But you can use that land management plan as a doodle pad to reflect to the client what you're thinking. And remember, you can add labels, you can add descriptions, you can change the colors of it, etc. So hedgerow planting, for example, on my map. As a note, everything on the land management plan by default has an orange boundary around the outside. So actually, let me just demonstrate that. If I just turn off the red border for those, everything has got an orange outline. And the reason for that is it then quickly allows you to identify whether that's an existing baseline thing or a future management. So when you overlay the two, you can start to see where those actions are. So the orange outlines or the orange lines are just land management options. Here's where we want to put a new woodland, new grassland, and hedgerow planting. Again, you've got full flexibility on the styling of that. And just a reminder, you can use that right click and select feature type to, in bulk, change the styling for whatever you want. So I turn the opacity up, for example, make it a bit clearer potentially. I've gone and crashed it. Apologies. We're back. Okay, so that's manually building a land management plan off the back of your survey, drawing up for your client where they could do new things, using those 2 different data layers at the individual level. Okay, just a note, and some of you I think came to the Wild Edges webinar we had last week. If not, I'm going to quickly demonstrate the Wild Edges process. It's a real big bit of development that we are focusing on, which is instead of manually drawing the land management plan, can we start to use algorithms to predict certain land management interventions? So I'm just going to show you where that is. In the Buy Data button at the top right, hit Buy Data, choose Wild Edges, and within here, and this is as a note, you do need an SBI number at the moment because it contains some good open source data that allows us to run the algorithm. We are looking at other ways, but using that SBI number, I can run what we call our Wild Edges algorithm for the entire farm, which is this. Hit Buy Now. And what that does is that just sends a request to the RPA, gets the field parcel information, and runs that field, or runs those fields through our algorithm, which adds buffers to existing hedgerows, adds buffers to existing watercourses, and also it protects ponds, etc. So I've run that, and you can see that it's created another data layer, another plan in the left-hand panel called wild edges. If I zoom in, you can see that it's now predicted where I should be putting in buffers. So it's said that I need to buffer this watercourse with a bit of a description, watercourse buffer, tusky grasses or woodland planting for that area. It's also picked up where the existing hedgerow is, and it says hedgerow widening through regeneration. And also for this one, agricultural margins, either grass or arable margins, just take those areas out of production. So it's using some basic rules of thumb, and definitely people on here, you're going to be able to provide better advice to the client at an individual level. But what this algorithm should allow you to do is just quickly get that management plan going, and it's in a state that is editable. So hypothetically earlier, I said, actually, these are best for woodland. That's not a problem. You can use this land management plan to then say, actually, I would rather woodland be in here. So you can either select them like this and, put your woodland back in. And also where I've got those buffers, you can remove them by just merging the features together. So select the woodland, select the margin you don't want, select the scrub area you don't want, and merge them together. And now my woodland is taking over that area. Obviously for the woodland planting, it probably will have a nice edge to it anyway. So that's just to make you aware that you can manually create those land management plans, or we're putting more and more in this area, so that wild edges is the first of many, but these are predictive management plans that just use existing features to say what ecologically would be a good thing to do, such as connecting up corridors, protecting existing hedgerows, letting existing hedgerows widen. That's just a good practice. So that's at the individual level. That's how you ecologists and you advisors can use the software to build up baselines and use the different templates to create a map for an individual farmer on future land use suggestions. You can export reports, table views, etc. But we're at a critical time in the country and internationally about recovery of nature. Some of the stats at the moment for the invertebrate loss, etc., is boggling my mind. And what we're really trying to do is work out how do we most efficiently help you practitioners on the ground facilitate at scale. So what I want to spend the last 15 minutes doing, and if there are any questions, do pop them in the chat as well. But I want to spend the last 15 minutes just explaining how you can now use the same principle across multiple farms to then understand what a greater benefit you could provide. So I've done an individual plan for this farm, which I can see. And the first step within that process is publishing the data to what we call an organizational data layer. And that organizational data layer, or map of maps, is activated through this black tick that's next to your projects. So my best guess UK Hab map here, I can click this button and the black tick goes from black to green, and it now says it's published to my organization's data layer. As a note, this is only available for our subscribers, so please get in touch if you want to learn a bit more about the subscription model. But I want to show you its value right now. So I published that, and also what I want to do is I want to publish my Wild Edges demo, which includes a bit of my woodland and some of my management options. And obviously you guys will spend a bit more time with the client drafting up and honing that management plan rather than rushing it in 10 minutes. But I've now published these two layers to my organization's data layers. What this then does is at midnight, the Land app goes and aggregates for your organization. So this state is unique to your organization. So you might have, for example, a FWAG and a Ceres and another agency all publishing the data. Everyone can publish this farmer's maps if they've got permission as a publisher. So we've got this third level permission. You can invite your facilitator in, your neighbor, local advisor as a publisher in here, and they can publish those maps to the organization data layer. And at midnight, each of those organizations get an independent organization data layer within their right-hand panel. So you can see that I've got might be unique to many of you, but I've got a layer called organization. And within here, all of my different project templates have been aggregated together. So for example, if I turn on my baseline habitat assessment, what you see is all of the local habitat maps that I have published within Land app. So that's the local scale, and you can obviously start to see how these individual farms, I think there's 9 different farms we're working with together in there, fit together. And also, if you turn on the land management plan, you can see how all those different new interventions fit next to one another. So you could have a series of 6, 10, 50 farms visually all trying to achieve something. And you can start to use these organization data layers to see how they fit next to one another, who's actually maybe the most important for connectivity of a certain habitat type. What I want to do, instead of demonstrating this, because we were actually working on a DEFRA project up in Cheshire, I'm just going to move maps quickly and really dive into that map of maps, and also show you how that then feeds into a dashboard. So we're working up in Cheshire with the Chumney Estate. It's a really exciting local nature recovery pilot. And what the plan is we've made a baseline for everyone. We've then got each of those tenants, and there's 22 different tenants involved, to run the land management plan algorithm, the wild edges. So then they've got their wild edges output. We're then using map of maps to look at how those land management plans fit next to one another. So if I turn on my baseline habitat up here, you can see that I've got 21 different tenants all next to one another. You can see that the existing baseline is that. And you can also then turn on their land management plan and see what impact we would have if everyone did a wild edge. So these are all the potential buffers that could be created if this whole estate did the wild edge algorithm, confirmed it, gone and ground truthed it, and checked where they actually could put the margin. So visually, that's obviously super powerful. Ecologically, you can see that corridors are opening up. We're on this estate, we're taking, I think it's about, on average, it's looking about 8% of productive land is coming out. But the increase in connectivity and water resource protection and carbon is to be calculated, but visually pretty high. But being pragmatic, it's not realistic that all of these edges could go in. Who's going to fund them? Not everyone's going to go into stewardship. Some people have got stewardship. So we're basically at the moment talking hypotheticals, but we'd love to engage any of you that are working with groups of farmers to start to use this model for local nature recovery. Just use it to first get that blue sky thinking, that what if, but then we can help you drill down and prioritize which of these wild edges are more important. The way that we do that is a couple of things. We can obviously spatially prioritize. So for example, if you had hypothetically managed to speak to a water company who was interested in funding all of the buffers that protect watercourses, we've got the data on that, and we can help you identify which of those buffers are most important for, say, flood zone protection. So you can see that in here, there's these next to flood zones. If I then click on this, it gives me a hyperlink to the map that's relevant to that particular buffer. Or other data sets, we can look at, what would be another relevant one for this, maybe triple SIs. Which of these buffers are the ones connecting the triple SIs? So it might be that we want to work down in this corridor to try and improve the connectivity using this, wild edge principle between those two triple SIs. But the visualization is only one part of it. And what we've done is we've now built some live interactive dashboards that allow different estates, such as Chumney or facilitation groups, to get a live feed from their group about how progress is going. So this is a live data map that hopefully would have updated just now. So updated 6 minutes ago, of what's currently happening within that baseline, within that land management plan. So this is the breakdown of the estate. We've got 2,200 hectares, of which 213 is in a land management plan for habitat creation or enhancement. And this is the breakdown of what we're doing, or what they're doing, sorry, in terms of existing. And then we've also got this tab that's called land management plan, which is a breakdown of the different habitats that they want to create using this wild edge algorithm. So in total, we're looking to create, and again, we're still in hypotheticals. We've got a lot of engagement to do, and the estate and the tenants and the local wildlife trust are working together to work out which of those margins are realistic. But you can see the potential here of creating, over 80 hectares of additional scrub through the regeneration, an additional 87 hectares of field margins, 42 hectares of watercourse buffers. And so what we're trying to do is just provide you with the tools to innovate around this local nature recovery. DEFRA has really got a tool order, but it's genuinely not going to happen unless farmers on the ground and facilitators working with them have a simple tool that allows them to start doing these, these landscape plans. Within this dashboard, you can see that we've got 22 different holdings. live breakdowns. If someone adds a woodland, for example, onto their management plan, this dashboard will update with that woodland, and they can see, how the percentage of the management changes. But also we've got this project pipeline tab, which just provides, especially at the admin level, how much how much is each of those tenants contributing to that land management plan. So if, for example, I was just going to speak to tenant number 10, and the reason we've anonymized them is for DEFRA, and it means I can share them with you now, which is exciting. So tenant number 10 potentially could create, what's that, 12 hectares, 12 hectares of habitat that's broken down into field margins, hedgerow restoration, watercourse buffers. So you could, if you just want to target watercourse buffers or certain areas, you can use this as a bit of a tool to understand that. And the final point, just to show you while I'm here, is that we've also got this tenant level planning tool that allows the Wildlife Trust in particular to just, if they are speaking to a certain tenant, like tenant number 10, filter the data, understand what their contribution is in terms of their total farm size, their total area of existing habitats, but also the total area that might go into wild edges, and therefore the total area that's coming out of production. So hopefully this is just demonstrating that these dashboards, we can be pretty flexible. We'd love to just work with you. But these dashboards allow you to get insight both at the aggregated level, but also if you need to drill down into how it affects a certain member of your group, certain client, they also can be used in that way. So that just leaves me to say, this isn't just a Land Hub idea. There's been loads of people that have been working on this idea up to the point that we're just lucky to be in a space where we can start to build, tech around other people's great ideas. And so, yeah, thank you to these and more for contributing. But that kind of summarizes my demonstration. If you've got any questions, or actually the group's kind of small enough, so if you want to come off mute or put your hand up and I can bring you off mute and you can ask some questions live. But if not, on your way out, please do answer those Q&As questions that we put at the end of the survey form. Thank you very much.